All right, hello, this is Brian. This is a super quick video explaining the nuts and bolts and the basics of Shakespeare's sonnets for the purpose of students in Acting 1 who are using their sonnet as a monologue for a vocal exercise. This is not super in-depth analysis of Shakespeare. This is just a little bit of intro to how the sonnets are structured and possibly how they work to help students in Acting 1 get a better handle on it and um, how to use it without spending a whole lot of time thinking about Shakespeare. So here's an example of a sonnet. This is one of the ones that you could have selected from. Sonnets are broken up into 4 sections, 4 lines, 4 lines, 4 lines, and 2 lines. The 4 lines are called quatrains. There are 4 lines, and so it's called a quatrain. And the last 2 lines is the couplet. So a sonnet is made up of 3 quatrains and 1 couplet. Basically, here's the way they work. An idea is presented in the first quatrain, presenting this sort of, hey, this is an idea. And then the second and the third quatrain develop that idea further. We get more information, we get more specifics, and then, very importantly for an actor, the couplet draws a conclusion, or your point is in the couplet. There's usually some turn in the couplet. There's usually a new idea. Think of the couplet as your opportunity to really make your point. For those students who know what an elevator phrase is, you probably have a very different elevator phrase for your couplet than you do for the first 3. That's not always necessary, but in general. So think of it's sort of in 3 sections. There's presenting an idea, there's developing the idea, there's developing it further, and then there's really driving your point home. Basically, what your character wants is going to be most directly expressed in the couplet, right? And I use the terms quatrain and couplets in class a lot, so you need to know what those things mean. Another thing to bear in mind for Shakespeare's sonnets, his use of punctuation is different than ours. So something that you need to do, maybe we'll do it in class, maybe you'll just need to do it on your own, is figure out where you have an end stop. What is an end stop? An end stop is final punctuation, a period, an exclamation point, or a question mark. Probably if there is a question mark, Shakespeare has already given you one. But sometimes a comma is actually a period. Not with this example, I shouldn't have highlighted there. As an unperfect actor on the stage who with his fears put beside his part, comma, definitely goes there. Or some fierce thing replete with too much rage, whose strength's abundance weaken his own heart. There should be a period there instead of the semicolon, right? Just because that's the way we're using the punctuation. You could certainly argue that a semicolon there makes sense, but for our purposes, I want you to think of that as a period, primarily because I want you to take a breath. As we know, a breath is a complete thought, and when you breathe in a new idea, you're expressing that on one breath, hopefully. Now, the easiest way to think of a sonnet is 4 complete thoughts. Here's a thought. Each quatrain is a thought, and the couplet is a thought. It's possible that you might have a period in the middle of a quatrain. Maybe for you want to put a period after here, and that will be okay. So I, for fear of trust, forget to say the perfect ceremony of love's right, period. And in mine own strength seems to decay. That could be 2 different thoughts, certainly. Some of them are actor call, and some of them just are. If there's an and, that's debatable whether or not it's a continuation. Believe it or not, a sentence can start with an and, so that's fine. But it's depending on your sonnet. I'm not gonna leaf through all of these, but look at your sonnet and ask yourself, should there be a period somewhere? The only example here I'm finding is really that one. so that's another way to think about it. So that's the main thing I want to say. Really think of 4 separate thoughts, and probably a new idea or a new thought are driving your focus home. That's the basics. And please note that sometimes there could be a period in the middle of a line. That's not very common in Shakespeare, but it could be. That's called the caesura, the middle, if there's a transition in the middle of a line. Some people argue that there's a caesura in every one of Shakespeare's lines. It would not call for a period, but I don't think that's really useful info for the sonnet, so you might want to forget I just said that. Now, to go a little bit deeper with how Shakespeare's language works, some of you know this already, some of you have been there before. Please know that in Acting 1, you do not have to analyze your sonnet in this way. But if you're interested in how Shakespeare's language works, it can be extremely helpful. Shakespeare has given you everything you need as an actor in his verse. So let's just cover the basics. Iambic Pentameter is the name of Shakespeare's verse. Actually, it's more accurate to say it's blank verse. Blank verse is iambic pentameter, but has variations in the iambic pentameter. Actually, in this line, I don't think there, in this poem, I don't think there is a line that is all iambic pentameter. So iambic pentameter would be, well, first of all, one line of iambic pentameter is 5 feet. So, and the feet are divided here by these slash marks. So, let me is 1 foot. 1 foot has 2 syllables, and each syllable is either stressed or unstressed. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this one varies quite a bit. Iambic pentameter is unstressed, stressed. So they would all be like this: admit, imped, demence, love is, not love. Now we would say love is, not love is. I'm not going to take the time to dig up a written example of this, but the easiest one is Romeo. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moose. Envious moon, not the moose, that would be a mess. That is regular, straightforward iambic pentameter. 5 feet, unstressed, stressed. Unstressed, stress. Every line is, every foot is unstressed, stress. But as we see here, which is very common in Shakespeare, it doesn't always follow the rhythm. Sometimes you get a stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, unstressed, stressed. Sometimes you get 2 unstressed or 2 stressed. Many people would argue, and I would agree, that Shakespeare has given you a whole lot of clues in the use of his rhythm. If the rhythm varies from straightforward iambic pentameter, then he is saying that the character is dealing with something, that you need to pay attention to this. They're probably not feeling normal. In Romeo, when he sees Juliet, and but soft with light through yonder window breaks, it is the east and Juliet is the sun, he's feeling really good. Everything's fine. He sees this girl that he wants. Everything's great. In this poem, for example, this speaker is dealing with some stuff because the verse, the meter, is all over the place. You see it especially here at the beginning when they're dealing with this idea, let me not to the marriage of true minds. Now, let me add here that not everybody has to scan the same way. You probably would not want to scan this regular. Let me not to the marriage of true minds. That just sounds silly. And there are certainly cases where in Shakespeare's time we pronounced a word differently than we do today. So that's something you got to take into consideration. I think there's not a whole lot of reason, especially when you're dealing with sonnets, to not pronounce the words as we would see them today, as we would say them today. But it's up to you whether or not you feel like if you're going to analyze the text this way, if you feel like the variation in rhythm is worth investigating. So probably not even in Shakespeare's day would they have said, let me not to the marriage of true minds. Let me not let me not to. You know, you wouldn't put an emphasis on to. The marriage, yeah, that works. The marriage, ridge is going to be less stressed. The marriage of, you wouldn't put an emphasis on of. True minds, this is one, maybe not. Let me not to the marriage of true minds. Maybe you would throw away true and emphasize minds. Generally, you know, a line will end stressed. If it ends in an unstressed way, that's generally referred to a feminine ending, although that is certainly sexist language. That's just what it's called. And Shakespeare has made a choice there. Why did he put an unstressed syllable on the end of a line? Now here you see a lot of the times a feminine ending will be on a line that has extra syllable. So that looks on term, that looks on tempest and is never shaken. There's an extra syllable there. That means there's something important about that line. There's something that the character is dealing with. There's something that's worth you're saying, why is that written that way when the standard would be 5 feet of unstressed, stressed? He's giving me an extra syllable, and some of these feet in here really vary. Well, just one in this line. This one's kind of all over the place. This character, I would argue that the character in this sonnet is really trying to grapple with something, really trying to make a decision. They don't really seem to get to stable ground, because even in the couplet, they're still not in strict rhythm. So my point being here, if it's not, is what is strict rhythm? Strict rhythm is 5 feet, unstressed, stressed. If it's not that, I would encourage you to ask yourself why. Now, again, for acting 1, it's not acting Shakespeare. You can take a whole class on acting Shakespeare if you want, and this is a lot of what we do is analyze the rhythm, because Shakespeare's given actors everything they need in the way his verse is written. Shakespeare has written a lot of plays. All of his plays contain a lot of prose. Actually, all of Shakespeare's not written this way, but for the verse, he's helped you out a lot. So just some info on how to analyze a sonnet.